Hey everyone, today I'm talking about INFJ personality types and the fawning response. I'm doing this video because I've gotten a lot of emails lately with questions from people about the fawning response and how it ties into trauma. I think everybody is mostly familiar with fight or flight, and then in recent years it's become fight or flight or freeze, and then in even more recent years it's become fight, flight, freeze, or fawning. These are basically behaviors that are coping mechanisms. These are survival strategies that emerge in us when we feel threatened by a situation or a person. So fight or flight is pretty simple, and we've all been raised on fight or flight. You either stand your ground and fight, or you escape, you flee. You leave the situation as quickly as you can. Freeze is you freeze in place. You become numb, you become blank. You stop talking, you stop doing anything. Fawning is different from any of these previous three. Fawning is extreme people-pleasing behavior. It's extreme accommodation behavior. So it's going along with anything the person who's threatening you wants, even if it's ridiculous, even if it makes no sense, even if it might be a safety hazard to yourself. Definitely not in your best interest, but still, someone who is trapped in the fawning response will go along with it. They will follow orders or they will follow instructions that are explicitly spoken to them or even unspoken instructions, right? So they'll pick up on what they think the person wants, they'll anticipate what they think the person needs from them, and then they will go into extreme people-pleasing to make that happen. So the fawning response is a trauma response, and this is usually born out of childhood trauma, having a parent who was erratic or unpredictable or abusive, having a narcissistic parent where you were expected to go along with their every whim, their every wish, their every preference, and not only go along with it, but anticipate it. Anticipate it before it was spoken, before it was expressed in the household. INFJ personality types are very, very good at doing this with people. We are very good at sussing out the person's expectations, what they want, their preferences, anticipating those kinds of things, and then meeting those needs before they are even expressed. What I want to talk about today with the fawning response, because I do think when we talk about the fawning response, the person who's doing it, the INFJ who's doing the fawning response, it's usually seen as a submissive response. It's usually seen as giving up our power to the other person, which it is to some degree. If you're caught in constant fawning, yes, you are giving away your power. That's true. But I think sometimes when we just scratch the surface of what's going on with the fawning response, we only see it as submission. We only see it as sort of the dog rolling over on their back and showing their belly to the other dog. Please don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you want. I'll be whatever you want. So like I said, to a certain degree that is present, but there's another layer that's not usually talked about or even recognized, which is the factor of control. INFJ personality types, when we use the fawning response, we are not just doing it to settle the other person or to keep our safety intact, although we are doing it for those reasons, but we're also doing it to assert a form of control. This is how a lot of INFJ personality types, especially those who are unconscious, stuck in dysfunctional patterns, stuck in old negative energy patterns from the past, this is how we keep control in situations. And this is how we keep control in a lot of our relationships with other people. Because when you're engaged in the fawning response with someone, you're basically managing their emotional state, whether they know you are or not. And most of the time people don't know you are doing this, especially if they are a toxic person or a narcissistic personality. Those types of personalities do not have the kind of awareness to look at the nuances of emotional complexity in their interactions with other people. They're not capable of that. They know that they want certain things, and if they don't get those certain things, they're going to get frustrated. The INFJ tends to give them the things they want, so they are not frustrated or they remain in an okay state around the INFJ. That's usually the extent of what they know. INFJs themselves, ourselves, as we're as we are using the fawning response, we are also usually unconscious. We don't usually recognize to what degree we are using it to maintain control in the relationship. But just because we're unconscious of it, it doesn't mean that's not happening, because that's what we're doing. We're keeping control of the other person's energy state. We are managing the other person's emotions. We're shifting their emotions. We're coaxing them into usually a more positive state. We're usually coaxing them out of anger, disappointment, frustration, them lashing out at us in some way, or them just lashing out at the world. And we're coaxing them into what we believe is a more positive state, where they are calmer, we've met some of their needs, so they're satisfied in the moment. Now, where we run into problems, like I said, this is a survival strategy. So, of course, we did it with our narcissistic parents. Maybe we do this with a tyrannical boss at work or someone else that we find threatening. In those cases, yes, it is a survival strategy. But what happens when we're unconscious of it, we'll carry this behavior over into many, many relationships, even those that are not toxic or the other person is not narcissistic. We have no reason to be threatened by them. So a lot of times we'll do this with our partner. Even if we have a healthy, well-adjusted partner, and our partner is just expressing anger. They're expressing healthy anger. They're doing it in a healthy way. They're not lashing out at us, but maybe they're upset. They appear upset. Maybe they're raising their voice, or they're clenching their fists, or they're very tight, or they're very constricted. They have a very angry look on their face. Again, they're not actually posing a threat to anyone's safety. They're just angry in that moment, and they're expressing that. For a lot of INFJ personality types, this can feel very threatening, and then we will go into a fawning response. Then we will try to sort of insert ourselves into our partner's energy state, and we're offering things, well, what about this, or what about that, or we could do this. We're trying to fix it. We're trying to heal it. We're trying to soothe them. We're trying to offer them all these different things. We're hovering. A lot of the time we're physically hovering around them. Even if we go into another room, we're still energetically hovering around them. We're sort of like fluttering around them. You know, what can I do? How can I help? What do you need? Much of the time, if the person is healthy and they're emotionally healthy, they have emotionally healthy boundaries, they will find this behavior even more frustrating. This will sort of make them even more angry, because we're not allowing them to have their emotions. We're not allowing them to just sit and process their own anger. We're trying to take it away from them. We're trying to distract them. We're trying to soothe them and get them onto something else. We're trying to coax them into a different energy state when they are not ready to leave the energy state they are in. They need to be in the energy state they are in so that they can process the energy. They can process what they're learning from it. Usually that energy state has some sort of information for them. So, you know, say our partner is in a toxic job. They hate their job. They've been frustrated with it for a long time. They get up one morning and they open an email from their boss, and it makes them very, very angry. And they come into the kitchen as we're making the morning coffee, and they're so angry, and maybe they're like kind of shouting, or they're very upset and they're saying my boss is a jerk. When we go into fawning because we feel unsafe around their anger response, we're trying to distract them. We're trying to say, oh, well, it's not so bad, or let's think about this instead, or, well, don't you want to do this? We're trying to coax them out of that energy state. Now, again, they need to be in that energy state. In this example, your partner and their anger over their boss's email, it's part of a larger picture. And a lot of times that's what that person needs. That person needs to be in their anger to say, I'm not going to do this anymore. This doesn't work for me. This alignment has fallen too far out of balance, and I can feel it. I can feel it in my body in a very extreme anger response. I don't want to do this anymore. A lot of the time when people are having a healthy anger response, it's fuel. It's the fuel they need to get themselves out of a pattern they've been entrenched in, to jar themselves loose from a situation that they've been stuck in. And when we come in and do the fawning response and we're saying, oh no, it's not that bad, or look over here at this bright shiny thing, stop being angry, we're distracting them from that work. They really need that anger in that moment. And so that's where the fawning response can become a real problem in intimate relationships for INFJ personality types. Now, again, also, as I said, it is giving away a lot of your own power, especially if you have friends or family members or coworkers who actually are toxic people. They don't have healthy boundaries. They're not expressing healthy anger. They're dysfunctional. They're toxic. And you're remaining in a pattern with them because you're doing this fawning response with them all the time. It blocks your own flexibility because the moment you're around these people, you go into a script. You go into a program that you've run many, many times before. It's not spontaneous. There's no room for anything new. Usually nothing like new can emerge out of it. It's just this script you're running, and it blocks your own emotional flexibility. So your reactions become rigid. They say this, and then you're supposed to say that. And then they say this, and then you're supposed to say that. So you're going around and around the same circle. And like I said, that energy gets stuck there, right? It's just circling around and around in this blocked sort of pattern. And then the energy slows down and it clogs. It clogs within your system because it's becoming rigid, it's becoming blocked, it's becoming congealed. And if you do this for years on end with people, it will become calcified. So if you've ever seen like a much older couple, a couple in their 70s or 80s or 90s who have been toxic and dysfunctional with each other for decades, you can really see these calcified energy patterns in place. And when they talk to each other, they repeat the same script over and over. There is never anything new. They use the same words. They call each other the same names. They sort of shoot the same arrows at each other over and over again because those patterns have calcified. The energy started slowing down. It started clogging up. It started congealing. And at some point, it became calcified or almost fossilized, right? And then it's like hard as stone. And it's almost impossible to dislodge yourself out of that energy pattern. So that's another pitfall we want to be really careful with something like a fawning response. This isn't to say you should never use a fawning response. If you are around somebody who's actually dangerous, if you're in an unsafe situation, if you're an 8-year-old and you live with abusive parents, the fawning response works. The fawning response is actually a very adaptable survival strategy in those extreme moments because it does placate abusers for a time, and that might give you the time you need to escape. Whether you're 8 years old and you need to wait until you're 18 and you can move out of the house, or you're in some sort of dire emergency situation where you've been kidnapped by someone crazy, the fawning response can really work. But the fawning response is not a strategy that we want to use in everyday life, where we are safe, we are surrounded by people who have boundaries, we do have a great partner who has healthy energy, we just have these holdovers from childhood, and we're using this fawning response still. That's when we really want to look at, okay, what am I doing here? Why am I doing it? And is this helping me anymore? Because if we stay stuck there, we stay stuck inside a box that we can't really move outside of without conscious effort, and our soul can't express itself. Our soul cannot express its spontaneous expressions of love or intimacy or desire or whatever it is. Our soul doesn't feel safe to do that. The fawning response is very limited. It's very constricting. And also, if we keep using it, you will attract more narcissists. You will attract more toxic people because it's a pattern they recognize. It's a pattern they recognize from their own dysfunction or their own past, and they will be magnetized towards you. And then the two of you will fall into this same old familiar pattern together. So to break out of the fawning response, this is where it gets uncomfortable for INFJ personality types. We have to lose a little bit of control. We have to let ourselves feel out of control. So when your healthy partner with healthy energy is having a healthy anger response, instead of trying to fix it or make it better or hover or distract them, we want to step back and we want to let them have that. As they are having their anger, and they might shout, they might make unpleasant facial expressions, they might call their boss names, right? They might say, I wish this would happen, and it's something horrible, and inside as an INFJ, you're like, oh, don't wish harm on anyone, but they're very mad at the person in the moment, right? as they're having all of these reactions, we need to step back and let them have it. That's going to make us feel out of control. We are going to feel like we've lost control of the situation, and we're feeling very triggered, and we're feeling maybe even some deep fear. We need to ride it out. If you need to remove yourself from the situation, that's totally okay. You don't need to stay right by your partner's side as they're working through their anger. A lot of times people don't want you right by their side as they're working out their anger. And I think that's something INFJ personality types tend to forget, or we don't think about, because we are such counselors and such constant supporters. We think if anybody's going through some sort of intense emotion, we need to be there right next to them, holding their hand through it. That's not always true, right? So if you don't leave the house, go, into the bedroom to fold laundry. Go into the kitchen to clean up the refrigerator or cook something, right? Or go take a walk outside. Let your partner have the house or the apartment or whatever it is. Like, remove yourself and give them some time, and then come back when they've had a chance to work out that emotion and to process that emotion. And then the flip side of this, a lot of times we think if we don't do the fawning response, we won't be fulfilling the other person's needs. We think they need us to be this constant supporter, this constant positive force, the one who shifts their emotions, the one who helps them manage their moods. We are the one that has it all together. We're always optimistic. You don't need to do that, and you can actually let go a lot of that when you let go of the fawning response. You can let others see you as messy. You can let others be disappointed in you if you don't have the reaction that they are expecting or that they want you to have, that they would prefer you to have, right? You can have your own reactions, and they won't be pleased with you all the time, and that's okay. So maybe your partner goes on these rants about their boss who's a jerk every single week, and they just say it's so unfair, and I don't like them, and I don't understand, and why am I being treated this way? And up until now, you've agreed and you've agreed and you've agreed, and you've been that constant cheerleader. When you break out of fawning, you can say, you've been complaining about your boss every week for the past 6 months. So you can stay and you can keep complaining, or you can make a change, right? Which that might be triggering to them. They were expecting you to agree with them and to kind of people please in that way, and suddenly you're not. Suddenly you're having a different reaction and saying, well, if you don't like it, change things. That might mean that they're not pleased with you. Now your partner is not really pleased with you and they're upset. That's okay. That's part of it. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to abandon you or they're going to hate you forever. But it does mean that you are experimenting with breaking out of the fawning response. You are experimenting with not pleasing everybody all the time, not always agreeing with everything that's presented to you, and not going along with absolutely everything. So it's uncomfortable, it's messy, but it's worth it. And the good ones, the people in your life who actually are healthy and have healthy energy, they'll stay. Even if they're upset in the moment with you, they wish you would agree with them, you didn't agree with them, they're not pleased with you, they will get over it. If they are emotionally mature human beings, once they've settled down, they'll come back and say, I didn't like what you said, or I didn't like the way you said it, but I'm not going to be mad at you forever, or I do see that you had a point there, right? They're willing to talk about it with you. The ones who are dysfunctional, the ones who aren't going to shift, don't want to shift, they want to stay right in their negative energy pattern forever till they're 95 years old, those people will fall away because you have stopped people pleasing with them. You've stopped agreeing with them on everything. They're not getting what they want from you any longer, so they will fall away, and that's okay. Even if you feel kind of a loss or a panic of, well, everyone's falling away and I'm not going to have any friends, you are going to have friends. You're going to have new friends who come in who are not going to expect you to agree with everything and people please with them all the time. I'm going to be talking about this topic and more in a new workshop I'm teaching, INFJ and INFP relationships. We are going to be covering friends and frenemies, which is what I did my last video on, friends and frenemies, and also love relationships, soulmates and partners, and how we navigate those types of relationships. Also, why we never feel seen and why we feel so misunderstood. These are the emails I get all the time from INFJ personality types and INFP personality types. I never feel seen. I never feel understood. I feel rejected by everyone. Why are relationships so hard? I will say before we even do this workshop, human relationships are hard. There is no easy fix, but there's a lot of things we can learn about ourselves as intuitive personality types that help a lot with human relationships and don't make them feel like a constant source of suffering. There's a difference between human relationships are hard, and that's the way it is, and all of my relationships are a constant source of suffering. They don't need to be a constant source of suffering. So we're going to learn some strategies and some information in this workshop that's hopefully going to move us forward in the realm of relationships. Please sign up for the workshop. The link is below in the comments. Also, sign up for my newsletter. That's where I send out all the updates about new workshops, new classes, new video courses, book recommendations, book sales. Everything I have going on goes out through the newsletter. So please sign up for the newsletter. Please also like this video and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. Really helps the channel out. Thanks so much, everyone. Hopefully I'll see you in this workshop, and I will see you next time.